Alex Reed stepped off the transport shuttle and felt his boots hit solid ground for the first time in 3 weeks. The air on Serenity 7 tasted different from Earth's atmosphere. Cleaner somehow. Too clean. It made his nose itch. Around him, other new cadets gathered their belongings and headed toward the massive academy buildings that stretched across the horizon. Most of them moved in groups, chattering in languages Alex had studied but never heard spoken by native speakers. He recognized the melodic tones of the singers, the crystalline chimes of the rock people, and the sharp clicks of the bird folk. None of them talked to him. Alex shouldered his single bag and followed the crowd. The other cadets had fancy floating luggage that moved by itself, or servants carrying their things. Alex preferred to carry his own gear. It was lighter that way, and he knew exactly where everything was. The academy's main hall rose above them like a crystal mountain. Everything here was smooth and perfect, designed for beings who had never known rough weather or dangerous terrain. Alex's earth-made boots felt heavy on the polished floors, and his simple uniform looked rough next to the flowing robes and gleaming scales of his new classmates. "Look at that one," someone whispered behind him. Alex understood the words, though they were spoken in standard rather than English. "It walks like a predator. I heard they eat other living things on their world," another voice added. "Raw meat and plants that fight back." Alex kept walking. He had expected this. Earth was famous throughout the galaxy, but not in a good way. Most civilized worlds had gentle weather, calm seas, and animals that posed no real threat to intelligent life. Earth was different. Earth was what the galaxy called a death world, a planet so dangerous that only the strongest, most violent species could survive there. The fact that humans had not only survived but thrived on such a world made other species nervous. The registration hall buzzed with activity. Hundreds of young beings from dozens of worlds stood in neat lines, waiting their turn to receive room assignments and class schedules. Alex joined the shortest line and tried not to notice how the space around him gradually emptied as other cadets moved away. "Next," called the registration officer, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms. Alex stepped forward and handed over his papers. The officer's large eyes widened slightly when she read his homeworld designation. "Earth," she said, as if the word tasted strange. "You are the human cadet we were told about." "Yes, ma'am." She looked him up and down, taking in his height, his broad shoulders, and the way he stood perfectly still despite the weight of his pack. "I trust you understand that this academy maintains very strict rules about violence. Any aggressive behavior will result in immediate expulsion." "I understand." "Good." She handed him a data pad with his schedule and room assignment. "Your dormitory is in the East Wing, Level 7. You will be sharing quarters with Cadet Vera of the Crystalline Collective and Cadet Finn of the Etherian Republic." Alex nodded and stepped aside. As he walked away, he heard the officer whisper to her assistant, "Keep an eye on that one. Deathworlders can be unpredictable." The dormitory corridors were wide and bright, with windows that showed the academy's peaceful gardens and the calm blue lake that covered much of the planet's surface. Alex found his room and pressed his palm to the scanner. The door slid open to reveal a space larger than his family's entire apartment back on Earth. 2 of the 3 beds were already occupied by belongings. One corner held a collection of crystal formations that hummed softly with their own inner light, clearly belonging to his crystalline roommate. The other bed was surrounded by floating platforms covered in books, star charts, and what looked like very expensive writing instruments. Alex claimed the remaining bed and unpacked his few possessions. Everything he owned fit into 2 small drawers. He was hanging up his spare uniform when the door opened. His roommates entered together, deep in conversation. Cadet Vera was exactly what Alex had expected. A humanoid figure made of living crystal, her body reflecting the room's light in beautiful patterns. Cadet Finn was tall and lean, with feathers instead of hair and eyes that were too large and too sharp for his angular face. They stopped talking when they saw Alex. "Oh," Finn said, his voice carrying the slight whistle common to his species. "You must be the human." "Alex Reed," Alex said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Neither of them moved to shake it. After a moment, Alex lowered his hand. "I am Vera," the crystal being said, her voice like wind chimes. "This is Finn. We have heard much about your species." "Mostly warnings," Finn added with a sound that might have been laughter. They say your people are very dangerous. They say you come from a world so violent that it drives species mad, Vera said, though she sounded more curious than afraid. Is this true? Alex sat on his bed and considered how to answer. Earth is challenging, he said finally. But it's home. We learn to adapt. Adapt, Finn repeated. Yes, we heard about that too. They say humans can survive almost anything, that you fight constantly, even each other. We compete, Alex said, but we also help each other. That's how we survive. Finn's feathers ruffled with what Alex recognized as skepticism. The admission board must have very specific reasons for allowing a deathworlder into this academy. I wonder what they expect you to contribute. Before Alex could answer, a chime sounded throughout the dormitory, followed by an announcement in Standard. All new cadets report to the main assembly hall for orientation. All new cadets report to the main assembly hall. Vera's crystal body chimed as she moved toward the door. Come. We should not be late on our first day. As they walked through the corridors toward the assembly hall, Alex noticed how other cadets looked at him. Some showed open curiosity, others fear, and a few displayed what could only be described as disgust. He had expected this reaction, but it still stung. The assembly hall was enormous, filled with hundreds of young beings from across the galaxy. Alex, Vera, and Finn found seats near the middle, though Alex noticed that the seats immediately around them remained empty, even as the hall filled to capacity. Commander Null took the stage, a graceful being whose blue-green skin gleamed with moisture and whose large eyes reflected the light like pools of water. She was one of the depths dwellers, a species that had evolved in the deep oceans of their homeworld. Welcome, cadets, to the Galactic Military Academy. Commander Nail's voice carried clearly through the hall. You represent the finest young minds and strongest spirits from dozens of worlds. Here you will learn to work together, to understand each other, and to protect the peace that our civilizations have built together. Her eyes swept the crowd and seemed to linger for a moment on Alex. Some of you come from worlds of great beauty and gentle peace. Others come from more challenging environments. But here you are all equal. Here you will all face the same tests, the same trials, and the same opportunities to prove your worth. Alex sat straighter in his chair. Around him, hundreds of alien faces turned toward the stage, all listening to the same words about unity and cooperation. But Alex could feel the weight of their attention when Commander Nail mentioned challenging environments. Everyone knew she was talking about him. Tomorrow, your real training begins, Commander Nail continued. You will be tested in academics, in leadership, in physical capability, and in courage. Not all of you will succeed. The Academy accepts only the best, and we expect only the best from each of you. As the ceremony continued, Alex found himself thinking about the long journey that had brought him here. The selection process had been brutal. Thousands of humans had applied, but the Galactic Council had insisted that Earth could send only one representative. Alex had survived tests of intelligence, physical fitness, psychological stability, and cultural adaptability. He had trained for 2 years just for the chance to be here. Now, sitting in a room full of beings who saw him as a dangerous primitive, Alex wondered if all that training had been enough. The other cadets had grown up knowing they were destined for greatness, raised from birth to take their places among the galaxy's elite. Alex was just a farm kid from Montana who had scored well on some tests, but as Commander Nail spoke about the challenges ahead, Alex felt something familiar settle into his chest. It was the same feeling he got when facing a difficult climb, or when the weather turned dangerous during harvest season, or when his little sister needed protecting from the school bullies. It was the calm certainty that whatever came next, he would find a way through it. The ceremony ended and cadets began filing out of the hall. As Alex stood to leave, he heard Finn speaking quietly to a group of other bird-like beings. I give it a week, Finn was saying, maybe less. The first time something challenges it, the deathworlder will show its true nature. Then they'll send it back where it belongs. Alex said nothing as he walked past them, but he made a mental note. Finn clearly saw him as a problem that would solve itself. Alex had encountered that attitude before, and he knew there was only one way to change it. He would have to prove them all wrong. 3 weeks into academy life, Alex had fallen into a routine that felt almost normal. He woke before dawn, ran laps around the lake while his roommates slept, attended classes where he consistently scored in the top 10%, and spent evenings in the library studying galactic history and military tactics. The other cadets had stopped actively avoiding him, though few made any effort to include him in their social groups. Vera had begun asking him questions about Earth during their shared study sessions, showing what seemed like genuine curiosity about human culture. Finn remained coldly polite, speaking to Alex only when necessary, and making it clear he considered the human's presence an unfortunate mistake that would soon correct itself. Everything changed on a Thursday morning when Commander Nail announced the Courage Trial. This is a tradition that dates back to the Academy's founding, she explained to the assembled first-year cadets. Each of you will navigate the underwater obstacle course in our deep training facility. The trial tests not only your physical capabilities but your mental strength when facing the unknown. Alex studied the holographic display that showed the course layout. It was a series of tunnels, chambers, and obstacles built into the lake's natural underwater cave system. The course descended to a maximum depth of 30 meters and was designed to take approximately 20 minutes to complete with standard breathing apparatus. You will be equipped with atmospheric suits designed for your species-specific needs. Commander Nail continued. The trial is not a race. Your goal is simply to complete the course while demonstrating courage, problem-solving skills, and grace under pressure. Finn's head turned slightly in Alex's direction, and for just a moment, his large eyes held an expression that made Alex's instincts prickle with warning. It was the same look Alex had seen on the faces of bullies back home, right before they made their move. That evening, as Alex prepared his gear for the next day's trial, Finn approached his bed with what appeared to be friendly interest. I have been thinking about your trial tomorrow, Finn said, his voice carrying its usual musical quality. The underwater course might be particularly challenging for a species from a death world. Your people are adapted for land-based dangers, correct? Humans are pretty adaptable, Alex replied, checking the seals on his breathing mask. We manage. Of course, Finn's feathers rippled in what Alex had learned was equivalent to a smile. I merely wanted to ensure you have the best possible equipment. I have some experience with the course from my older siblings' trials. Perhaps I could examine your gear, make sure everything is properly configured? Alex hesitated. Finn had never shown this kind of helpful interest before, but refusing would seem suspicious, and maybe the bird-like cadet was genuinely trying to be friendly. Sure, Alex said, handing over his breathing apparatus and weight belt. I'd appreciate that. Finn took the equipment with careful talons, examining each component with what appeared to be professional thoroughness. Yes, this all looks standard. Though perhaps you should add a bit more weight to your belt. The course has some strong currents, and you want to maintain proper depth control. He made some adjustments to the weight distribution and handed the gear back. There, that should help you maintain better stability underwater. Thanks, Alex said, though something in Finn's manner still bothered him. The next morning dawned gray and overcast, with small waves chopping across the lake's surface. The underwater training facility was built into a natural bay, with changing rooms and equipment storage carved into the rocky shoreline. 12 cadets would attempt the trial that day, with observers monitoring from both surface boats and underwater viewing stations. Alex suited up alongside his classmates, running through the standard equipment checks he had been taught. His breathing apparatus felt slightly different than during training sessions, but Finn had assured him that minor variations were normal with different equipment sets. Commander Nail addressed the group as they prepared to enter the water. Remember, this is not a competition. Complete the course at your own pace. If you encounter any difficulties, activate your emergency beacon, and rescue divers will assist you immediately. One by one, the cadets entered the water and disappeared beneath the surface. Alex watched several of them through the underwater viewing screens, noting how gracefully most of them moved through the liquid environment. The aquatic species were naturally at home, while the land dwellers moved with careful, practiced motions they had learned in training. When his turn came, Alex checked his breathing apparatus one final time and slipped into the water. The lake was surprisingly warm, heated by underwater thermal vents that also provided the current flow for the obstacle course. Alex let himself sink slowly, equalizing pressure in his ears as he descended toward the course entrance. The first section was straightforward, a simple tunnel that led deeper into the cave system. Alex swam through it easily, his breathing apparatus providing steady airflow. The second obstacle required him to navigate through a series of narrow passages while maintaining proper buoyancy control. It was in the Third section that things went wrong. Alex was swimming through a chamber filled with artificial kelp when his breathing apparatus began to malfunction. The airflow became irregular, delivering bursts of gas followed by periods of nothing. He tried to adjust the regulator, but the problem seemed to be internal to the system. Worse, he was sinking faster than he should be. The weight belt Finn had adjusted was pulling him down with far more force than necessary. Alex looked at his depth gauge and realized he was already at 25 meters, much deeper than the course was supposed to go at this point. He tried to swim upward, but the excessive weight made it nearly impossible. His lungs were burning as the breathing apparatus delivered another burst of contaminated air that tasted of metal and chemicals. Alex realized with growing alarm that someone had tampered with his equipment. Through the murky water above, he could see the lights of the observation station and the shadows of other cadets completing their trials. None of them were looking in his direction. His emergency beacon was in a pocket of his suit, but the way the weight belt was pulling him down, he wasn't sure he could reach it. Alex forced himself to think clearly despite the growing panic in his chest. He was 30 meters underwater. His breathing apparatus was failing and he was weighted down like an anchor. In the observation stations above, instructors and fellow cadets were watching other parts of the course, unaware that one of their number was in deadly trouble. This was exactly the kind of situation Finn and his friends had probably expected to send the deathworlder home in disgrace, if not worse. They had set up what they thought would be a humiliating failure, not realizing how badly their sabotage had backfired. Alex's chest burned as his lungs screamed for clean air. The breathing apparatus wheezed and died completely, leaving him with whatever oxygen remained in his bloodstream. Around him, the dark water pressed in from all sides, and the weight belt continued pulling him toward the lake's muddy bottom. But as the initial shock of the situation faded, Alex realized something that would have terrified his classmates. This wasn't actually the worst situation he had ever faced. Growing up on Earth, he had been caught in flash floods, trapped under ice during winter storms, and tumbled by ocean waves that could crush bones. Every human child learned water survival as a basic life skill, because Earth's oceans were not the calm, controlled environments that most galactic species called home. Alex stopped fighting the weight belt and let himself sink to the lake bottom. Once his feet touched the muddy floor, he had solid leverage to work with. His fingers found the emergency release on the belt and triggered it, sending the sabotaged weights dropping into the silt. Free of the excessive weight, Alex began his ascent. But he didn't swim directly upward toward the observation stations where concerned instructors might spot him and sound alarms that would bring shame to both him and his saboteurs. Instead, Alex swam laterally through the underwater cave system, using breath control techniques his grandfather had taught him during summer fishing trips. The human lungs were designed for efficiency, and Alex's body had been conditioned by years of swimming in Earth's dangerous waters. He moved through the dark water like a predator, conserving oxygen and navigating by touch in the faint light filtering down from above. Behind him, the discarded breathing apparatus and weight belt lay on the lake bottom, like evidence of attempted murder. Ahead, the obstacle course continued through chambers and tunnels designed to challenge cadets who had never faced real danger in their lives. Alex smiled grimly as he swam deeper into the course. Finn and his conspirators had made a serious miscalculation. They had assumed that a human, removed from his natural element, would panic and fail when faced with mortal danger. They were about to learn that for a species from Earth, being underwater without breathing apparatus wasn't a death sentence, it was just Tuesday. In the observation deck high above the underwater course, Commander Nail watched the monitoring screens with growing concern. 11 of the 12 cadets had completed the trial successfully, emerging from the water with the mixture of exhaustion and pride that marked a challenge well met. But one cadet was still unaccounted for. Where is the human? She asked the technician monitoring the tracking systems. Unknown, Commander. His equipment stopped transmitting approximately 15 minutes ago in Sector 7. We assumed he had completed the course and exited at one of the alternate surface points. Commander Nail's webbed fingers drummed against the control panel. Her species had evolved in deep ocean trenches, and she understood water in ways that land dwellers never could. 15 minutes without equipment signals usually meant one of two things: technical malfunction or cadet death. Deploy the rescue divers, she ordered. Search Sector 7 and the surrounding areas. If Cadet Reed is in trouble, Commander, The technician's voice carried sharp excitement. "I'm reading movement in Sector 12. Something large swimming fast, but no equipment signature." On the main display screen, a shadow moved through the deepest part of the course with fluid grace. The figure was definitely humanoid, but it was swimming without any visible breathing apparatus and moving through the water with an efficiency that seemed impossible for an air-breathing species. "Is that—" Commander Nail leaned forward, her large eyes reflecting the screen's glow. "Is that the human?" Above them in the spectator area, Finn watched the same screens with growing disbelief. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. The human should have panicked when his equipment failed. He should have surfaced immediately, gasping and terrified, proving once and for all that deathworlders had no place in civilized society. Instead, the figure on the screen moved through the water like it was born there. Alex Reed was not just surviving without breathing apparatus. He was completing the obstacle course faster than cadets who had worked with full equipment. "That's impossible," whispered Vera, her crystal body chiming with agitation. "No air-breathing species can hold their breath that long. The course record is 18 minutes with full equipment." On the screen, Alex navigated through a complex series of vertical shafts that required precise buoyancy control. Without the weight belt that had been sabotaged to drag him down, his natural buoyancy was perfectly suited to the course's requirements. He moved between obstacles with economical motions, never wasting energy on unnecessary movements. The other cadets in the viewing area pressed against the windows, watching in stunned silence as the human demonstrated abilities that their instructors had never mentioned in any xenobiology class. Several species were frantically checking their data pads, trying to find references to human aquatic capabilities. 30 meters below the surface, Alex felt the familiar burn in his lungs that meant he was approaching his limits. But these were comfortable limits, boundaries he had tested thousands of times in mountain lakes and ocean swells back home. His body was efficient with oxygen, designed by evolution to handle the extreme environments that covered most of his planet. He had been underwater for nearly 20 minutes now, and he could probably manage another 5 if necessary. But the course was almost complete, and he could see the bright lights of the exit chamber ahead. The final obstacle was a narrow tunnel that curved upward toward the surface. Most cadets found this section challenging, because it required them to swim against their natural buoyancy while managing bulky equipment. For Alex, swimming without gear, it was simply a matter of pulling himself along the tunnel walls with strong, steady strokes. He emerged from the underwater exit into bright sunlight, breaking the surface with barely a splash. Around him, instructors and safety divers who had been preparing for a rescue operation stared in shock as he treaded water with casual ease. "Cadet Reed," Commander Nail's voice carried across the water from the observation platform. "Please swim to the exit dock immediately." Alex nodded and swam the short distance to where a ladder provided access back to solid ground. As he climbed out of the water, he could feel hundreds of eyes watching his every move. His simple academy swimwear clung to his frame, emphasizing the muscle definition that came from growing up on a high-gravity world with dangerous weather. Water streamed from his hair as he stood on the dock, breathing normally and showing no signs of distress from his extended underwater journey. Around him, instructors and technicians stared as if they were seeing something that violated the basic laws of physics. "Cadet Reed," Commander Nail approached with several other instructors in tow. "Your equipment stopped functioning 15 minutes ago. How did you complete the course?" "I didn't need it," Alex said simply. "The course wasn't that deep and the water's warm. I've swum in much worse conditions, without breathing apparatus, for 23 minutes. Alex shrugged. "My grandfather taught me to free dive when I was 8. This is pretty standard for human water training." The silence that followed was deafening. In the spectator area above, Alex could see his fellow cadets pressed against the viewing windows, their faces showing mixtures of awe, fear, and disbelief. Finn's feathers were so ruffled they looked like he had been struck by lightning. "Standard," Commander Nail repeated slowly. "You consider a 23-minute underwater traverse to be standard training?" "For humans, yes, ma'am. We start learning water survival as children because Earth's oceans are challenging. Storms, currents, predators, temperature changes. You learn to handle anything the water can throw at you, or you don't make it to adulthood." One of the other instructors, a being whose species resembled a cross between a tree and a starfish, spoke up in a voice like rustling leaves. The course record was 18 minutes and 14 seconds, set by a cadet from Aquatica Prime, an entirely aquatic species. What was my time? Alex asked. Commander Nail consulted her datapad. 17 minutes and 8 seconds. From equipment failure to course completion, a murmur ran through the gathered observers. Not only had the human survived what should have been a fatal equipment failure, he had set a new course record while doing it. There will be an investigation into your equipment malfunction, Commander Nail continued. In the meantime, I want a full medical scan and a detailed report of your swimming capabilities. The Academy needs to understand exactly what human standard water training entails. As Alex was escorted to the medical facility for examination, he passed through the crowd of watching cadets. Their expressions had changed completely from the mixture of fear and disdain he had grown accustomed to. Now they looked at him with something approaching respect, though it was mixed with a healthy dose of apprehension. Vera approached him as he walked past. "Alex," she said quietly, her crystal voice chiming with what sounded like amazement. "How is this possible? My people have studied dozens of species, but none can do what you just did." "Earth is different," Alex replied. "We adapt to survive or we die. Simple as that." Behind them, Finn stood frozen in place, his large eyes wide with shock. The plan had been perfect. Sabotage the Deathworlders' equipment, watch him panic and fail, then use his humiliation to justify removing him from the Academy. Instead, the human had turned what should have been certain death into a demonstration of abilities that bordered on the supernatural. "This changes nothing," Finn whispered to his companions, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "He's still a savage from a barbaric world. One test doesn't prove anything." But even as he spoke the words, Finn knew they weren't true. What he had witnessed in the water hadn't been savage or barbaric. It had been grace under pressure, efficiency born of necessity, and a calmness in the face of mortal danger that few species could match. As Alex disappeared into the medical facility, surrounded by instructors eager to understand his capabilities, the other cadets began to disperse. But the conversations that started that day would continue for weeks to come. As word spread throughout the Academy about the human who had survived underwater for nearly half an hour and set a new course record while doing it. In the depths of the lake, Alex's sabotaged equipment lay scattered on the muddy bottom, silent testimony to a plan that had backfired spectacularly. What had been intended to expose the human as weak and unprepared had instead revealed abilities that no other species in the galaxy possessed. The Deathworlder had faced his first real test at the Academy, and he had passed it in ways that no one could have predicted. But more importantly, he had shown his fellow cadets that the skills learned on dangerous worlds weren't just tools for survival. They were gifts that could benefit everyone willing to learn from them. The investigation took 3 days to complete, and its results sent shockwaves through the Academy administration. Finn's sabotage had been thorough and malicious. Contaminated air mixture, sabotaged pressure regulators, and weight adjustments designed to send the victim plummeting to the lake bottom. Under normal circumstances, such tampering would have resulted in drowning and death. Commander Nail sat across from Alex in her office, a datapad containing the full investigation report between them. "The evidence is clear, Cadet Reed. This was attempted murder disguised as a training accident. Cadet Finn and 3 of his associates face immediate expulsion and criminal charges." Alex had been expecting this. The sabotage had been obvious once investigators began examining his equipment. What surprised him was his own reaction to the news. "I'd like to request that no charges be filed," he said quietly. Commander Nail's large eyes blinked in confusion. "I beg your pardon?" Finn made a mistake, but he didn't understand what he was doing. On Earth, we have a saying, "Never attribute to malice what can be explained by ignorance." He thought he was playing a prank that would embarrass me. He had no way of knowing it could actually be dangerous. "Cadet Reed, this being attempted to kill you." Alex considered his words carefully. "With respect, Commander, that's only true if you assume I'm as helpless in water as most galactic species. Finn grew up on a world where water deeper than a bathtub is considered hazardous. He's never experienced real swimming, real diving, or the kind of water dangers that are routine on Earth. From his perspective, he was sabotaging equipment that would force me to surface quickly and ask for help." Commander Nail leaned back in her chair, her webbed fingers drumming against its surface. As an aquatic species, she understood water better than most, but even her people relied heavily on technology for deep diving. You're asking me to overlook attempted murder because the perpetrator was too ignorant to realize he was committing attempted murder. I'm asking you to treat this as an educational opportunity instead of a criminal matter. Finn and his friends acted out of prejudice and fear, not genuine malice. Punishment won't change their attitudes, but understanding might. The commander studied Alex for a long moment. What exactly are you proposing? Let me teach them to swim. The silence that followed stretched long enough for Alex to wonder if he had overstepped some cultural boundary. Finally, Commander Nail spoke. You want to teach swimming to the cadets who tried to drown you? I want to teach swimming to anyone who wants to learn, not just Finn's group. Any cadet who's interested in developing water skills. Most of the galaxy species never learned proper swimming because their worlds didn't require it. That's a gap in their training that could be dangerous in real military situations. Commander Nail's expression shifted from confusion to something approaching intrigue. Continue. Think about it, Commander. How many rescue operations fail because team members can't handle aquatic environments? How many exploration missions avoid water-covered worlds because the crews lack proper water survival training? The galaxy is full of water, but most species treat it like a barrier instead of an environment they can work in. The commander's fingers stopped drumming. As someone who had grown up in the deep ocean, she knew exactly how many military operations had been limited by personnel who couldn't function underwater. Her own species was often called in as specialists for aquatic missions, not because the work was particularly difficult, but because so few others could handle prolonged water exposure. This is highly irregular. Cadet Reed, you're asking me to allow you to provide supplemental training to your fellow cadets. Yes, ma'am. Training in skills that your species considers basic, but which represent advanced capabilities for most galactic civilizations. Yes, ma'am. Commander Nail was quiet for another long moment, then activated her communication console. Lieutenant Torres, please send word to all first-year cadets. There will be a voluntary water skills workshop this afternoon at the lake facility. Attendance is optional, but recommended for anyone interested in expanding their operational capabilities. She closed the connection and turned back to Alex. You have one session to prove this concept, Cadet Reed. If it goes well, we'll discuss making it a regular program. If it goes poorly, Cadet Finn and his associates will face full disciplinary action. Thank you, Commander. That afternoon, Alex stood on the lake's shore and counted the cadets who had shown up for his impromptu swimming lesson. 23 beings from 15 different species had gathered, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical to openly nervous. Vera was there, her crystal body reflecting the afternoon sunlight. Several cadets from aquatic species had come, probably more interested in watching than participating. To Alex's surprise, even a few of Finn's associates were present, though Finn himself was notably absent. All right, Alex began, his voice carrying across the small group. First thing to understand about water is that it's not trying to hurt you. Water just is. It's neutral. The danger comes from not understanding how to work with it. He gestured toward the calm lake surface. Most of you have been taught that water is hazardous because your species evolved on worlds where deep water was rare or dangerous. But water follows predictable rules. Learn the rules and you can use them to your advantage. Alex waded into the lake until he was waist deep, then demonstrated basic floating techniques. Buoyancy is about displacement and density. Your body wants to float. You just have to let it. The key is relaxation. Several cadets followed him into the water, moving with the careful precision of beings who had been taught that liquid environments were inherently hostile. Alex worked with them individually, showing how small adjustments in body position and breathing could mean the difference between struggling against the water and moving through it with ease. Vera, he called to his crystal roommate, who had been watching from the shore. Want to try? Your body structure might actually give you some advantages. The crystalline being approached the water's edge with obvious hesitation. My people do not swim, she said. We sink like stones. Maybe, Alex said. But stones can still move through water if they understand the principles. Come on. Vera entered the water slowly, her crystal structure catching the light and creating rainbow patterns beneath the surface. As Alex had suspected, she was indeed quite dense. But her rigid body structure also made her incredibly stable in the water. You're right that you can't float like the others, Alex told her as she stood in shoulder-deep water. But look at this. He showed her how to use her crystalline structure for precise positioning and leverage underwater. You're like a living anchor. That's not a weakness, it's a tactical advantage. Within an hour, Vera was moving through the water with surprising grace, using controlled sinking and rising to navigate the lake with precision that none of the other cadets could match. The session continued as Alex worked with each species, helping them understand how their unique physiologies could be adapted for aquatic environments. The tree-like beings learned to use their flexible branches for propulsion. The insectoid species discovered that their natural ability to hold their breath made them excellent at underwater maneuvering. "This is remarkable," said one of the observers. An instructor from the engineering department. "I had no idea so many species could adapt to aquatic environments with proper training." As the session wound down, Alex noticed a familiar figure watching from the tree line above the lake. Finn stood partially hidden behind a cluster of native plants, his large eyes tracking every movement in the water below. "Hey, Finn," Alex called, his voice carrying clearly across the water. "There's still time to join us if you want." The bird-like cadet's feathers ruffled with what Alex recognized as embarrassment and conflict. For a moment it looked like he might approach the water. Then his posture stiffened with pride and he turned away without responding. But he didn't leave. Alex could see him throughout the rest of the session, watching from his hiding spot as his fellow cadets learned skills that he had dismissed as impossible for civilized species. As the sun began to set, and the cadets prepared to return to their dormitories, Vera approached Alex at the water's edge. "Why did you do this?" she asked, her voice chiming with genuine curiosity. "After what Finn did to you, why offer to teach us?" Alex considered the question while toweling off. "On Earth, we have dangerous weather, predators, natural disasters, all kinds of threats. But the biggest danger isn't any of those things. The biggest danger is facing them alone. Humans survive because we help each other learn, adapt, and grow stronger together." He gestured toward the lake where several cadets were still practicing the techniques they had learned. "Finn tried to hurt me because he saw me as a threat to his worldview. But I'm not here to threaten anyone. I'm here to learn and to share what I know. That's how all of us get better." Vera's crystal body hummed with what Alex had learned was deep thought. "Your species is not what we were taught to expect." "No species is exactly what others expect," Alex replied. "That's why we need to learn from each other instead of making assumptions." As they walked back toward the academy buildings, Alex noticed that the conversations around him had changed. Instead of the careful distance he had grown accustomed to, cadets were asking him questions about human swimming techniques, about Earth's oceans, and about other survival skills his people had developed. The Deathworlder was still an outsider, but for the first time since arriving at the academy, he wasn't alone. And in the shadows behind them, a certain bird-like cadet was discovering that his assumptions about savages and primitives might need some serious reconsideration. Word of Alex's swimming lesson spread through the academy faster than a plasma fire. By the end of the week, Commander Nail had received formal requests from 3 different department heads asking to observe the training sessions. The xenobiology professor wanted to study the adaptation techniques. The military tactics instructor was interested in the potential combat applications, and the rescue operations specialist was already drafting proposals for mandatory aquatic training. Alex found himself with 47 cadets signed up for his next session, representing 21 different species from across the galaxy. What had started as an impromptu lesson had evolved into something approaching an official academy program. "I've never seen anything like this," Vera told Alex as they prepared for the expanded lesson. Over the past week, she had become something of an assistant instructor, helping other cadets understand the basic principles Alex had taught her. "My people prize knowledge above all else, but we rarely share it so freely." Alex adjusted the floating platforms he had requisitioned from academy maintenance. "Knowledge isn't worth much if you keep it to yourself. Besides, I'm learning as much from all of you as you're learning from me." This was true. Working with so many different species had taught Alex things about adaptation and problem-solving that no human instructor could have shown him. The insectoid beings had taught him about efficient breathing techniques. The crystalline species had demonstrated principles of structural stability, and even the energy-based life forms had contributed insights about buoyancy and pressure management. The lesson that morning focused on rescue techniques and how different species could work together to help others in aquatic emergencies. Alex had paired cadets from compatible species and was teaching them to support each other's weaknesses while amplifying their strengths. Remember, Alex called to the group as they practiced in the shallow water. Every species has something to contribute. The key is understanding how your natural abilities can help your teammates. He demonstrated with Vera and a cadet named Dale from one of the insectoid worlds. Vera's crystal structure gives her perfect stability as an anchor point. Dale's breathing control lets him stay underwater for extended periods. Together, they can perform rescue operations that neither could manage alone. The two cadets moved through the water with increasing confidence, Vera providing solid support while Dale navigated the underwater obstacles with mechanical precision. Around them, other mixed species teams were discovering similar synergies. From the observation deck, Alex could see a familiar figure watching the lesson. Finn had been attending every session for the past 3 days, always staying at a distance, never participating, but clearly fascinated by what he was seeing. Today was different. As Alex watched, Finn's posture shifted from casual observation to obvious distress. The bird-like cadet was gripping the deck railing with his talons. His feathers fluffed in what Alex had learned was a sign of anxiety. Then Alex heard the splash and the cry for help. One of the newer cadets, a being from a low-gravity world whose species resembled upright dolphins, had misjudged the depth transition and found himself in water over his head. Unlike Earth dolphins, his species had never developed strong swimming abilities, and panic was setting in as he struggled to keep his head above the surface. Alex was moving before he fully processed what was happening, diving cleanly from the practice platform and cutting through the water with powerful strokes. But he wasn't the only one moving. From the observation deck, Finn launched himself toward the water in a diving motion that was clumsy but determined. The bird-like cadet hit the water hard, his natural buoyancy keeping him afloat, but his complete lack of swimming skill making him almost as helpless as the cadet he was trying to save. Now there were two beings in distress, flailing in water that was barely 10 feet deep but might as well have been an ocean to creatures who had never learned to swim. Alex reached them both, his training kicking in automatically. "Calm down," he told them firmly. "You're both safe. Just relax and let me help." He positioned himself between the two panicking cadets, using techniques his grandfather had taught him for dealing with multiple drowning victims. Within moments, he had both of them breathing normally and moving toward shallow water where they could stand. "Easy does it," Alex said as they reached the shallows. "You're both okay. Just breathe." Finn stood in waist-deep water, his feathers plastered to his body and his large eyes wide with a mixture of embarrassment and awe. "I couldn't swim," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I saw him struggling and I jumped in, but I couldn't swim." "But you jumped anyway," Alex pointed out. "That took courage. Courage." Finn's laugh held no humor. "I nearly drowned trying to save someone. I made the situation worse. You made the situation more complicated," Alex corrected. "But your instinct was right. You saw someone in trouble and your first thought was to help. That's exactly what a good officer should do." The other cadet, still shaking from his scare, approached Finn with obvious gratitude. "Thank you for trying to save me. Even though you couldn't swim, you tried." Finn's feathers began to settle as the immediate crisis passed. Around them, the other cadets had gathered in the shallow water, their expressions showing a mixture of concern and respect for what they had witnessed. "I want to learn," Finn said suddenly, his voice carrying a determination that Alex had never heard before. "Not just swimming, all of it. The rescue techniques, the breath control, everything you've been teaching them." Alex nodded. "Then we'll teach you. But first, let me show you something." He guided Finn to slightly deeper water, just deep enough that the bird-like cadet had to work to keep his head above the surface. "Your people evolved for flight, right? Your bones are hollow. Your body structure is designed for moving through air. Yes, but that makes me useless in water. I sink like a stone or float like a cork. I can't control it." "Actually," Alex said, "it makes you perfect for water in ways you haven't discovered yet. Watch this." He showed Finn how to use his natural buoyancy for precise positioning, how his hollow bones could be used for extended breath holding, and how his wing-like arms could provide powerful propulsion once he learned proper technique. "Your people might not have evolved in water," Alex explained, "but evolution gave you tools that work in water once you understand how to use them." The lesson that followed was unlike any of the previous sessions. With Finn finally participating instead of just observing, the dynamic of the group changed completely. Other cadets who had been holding back began to engage more fully, and species that had seemed incompatible began finding ways to work together. By the end of the session, Finn was moving through the water with something approaching competence, his natural grace translating surprisingly well to the aquatic environment. More importantly, he was helping other cadets, sharing insights about overcoming fear and adapting to unfamiliar situations. "I owe you an apology," Finn said to Alex as they toweled off afterward. "Not just for the sabotage, but for everything. I judged you without understanding what you were or what you could offer. We all make judgments based on incomplete information," Alex replied. "The important thing is being willing to change when you learn more." Vera approached them, her crystal body chiming with something that sounded like approval. "Commander Nail wants to speak with you both," she told Alex. "She's been watching today's session, and she seems very interested in what she saw." As they walked toward the academy building, Alex noticed that the conversations around him had evolved again. Instead of questions about human abilities, cadets were discussing how the techniques they were learning could be applied to their future military careers. They were talking about rescue scenarios, exploration missions, and combat situations where aquatic skills might mean the difference between success and failure. "You know what's remarkable about this?" Vera said as they climbed the steps to Commander Nail's office. 3 weeks ago, most of us had never spoken to a being from another world. Now we're teaching each other, learning from each other, becoming stronger together. Alex smiled. "That's kind of the point. Individual survival is good, but group survival is better. And group survival requires everyone to contribute what they can and learn what they need." Behind them, Finn's voice carried clearly as he talked with a group of younger cadets. "The human is right about fear," he was saying. "I was so afraid of looking weak that I almost let fear make me weak. But there's no shame in not knowing something, only in refusing to learn it." As they approached Commander Nail's office, Alex reflected on how much had changed since his arrival at the academy. He had come here expecting to prove that humans deserved a place among the galaxy's civilized species. Instead, he had discovered that civilization wasn't about where you came from or what your world was like. It was about what you did with the knowledge and skills you had, and how willing you were to share them with others who needed them. The emergency alarm cut through the academy's evening calm like a blade through silk. Alex was in the library, working on an assignment about interspecies diplomatic protocols, when the piercing wail sent every cadet scrambling for their emergency stations. "All cadets report to designated assembly areas immediately," the Academy's communication system announced. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Alex joined the stream of beings flowing toward the main assembly hall, but the crowd diverted toward the lake facility instead. Through the large windows, he could see the reason for the emergency. A passenger shuttle had crashed into the lake during the evening storm, its hull partially submerged about 200 meters from shore. Commander Nail was coordinating rescue efforts from the facility's command center, her voice carrying clearly over the noise of emergency vehicles and rescue equipment. "The shuttle contains 12 passengers and crew. Hull breach in the passenger compartment means the interior is flooding. Standard rescue protocols are ineffective due to storm conditions and limited underwater access." Alex pushed through the crowd of watching cadets until he could see the situation clearly. The shuttle had come down hard, its nose buried in the lake bottom while its tail section remained partially above water. Storm winds were driving waves against the exposed hull, and lightning illuminated the scene in stark, terrifying detail. "Rescue divers can't maintain position in these conditions," one of the instructors was reporting to Commander Nail. "The storm is generating too much turbulence, and the shuttle's position is unstable. We're reading life signs inside, but we can't reach them," Commander Nail finished grimly. Alex studied the scene with the analytical mind that had kept him alive on Earth's dangerous surfaces. The rescue boats couldn't get close enough to the shuttle because of the storm conditions. The traditional diving equipment was too bulky for the confined spaces inside a flooding passenger compartment, and the electrical activity from the storm made using most technological solutions too dangerous. This was exactly the kind of situation where human water skills could make a difference. "Commander," Alex said, stepping forward, "I volunteer to attempt a rescue." Commander Nail turned toward him, her large eyes reflecting both hope and skepticism. "Cadet Reed, the conditions out there are extremely dangerous. The storm, the electrical activity, the confined spaces." "Yes, ma'am," but I don't need the equipment that's making this difficult for your regular rescue teams. I can free dive to the shuttle, assess the situation inside, and potentially guide survivors to safety." "Absolutely not," interrupted the head of Academy Security, a massive being whose species resembled an armored bear. "Sending a cadet into that storm would be criminally irresponsible." "With respect, sir," Alex replied, "I'm not just any cadet. I've trained for this kind of situation my entire life. Stormy water, confined spaces, limited visibility. These are standard conditions for human water rescue on Earth." Before the debate could continue, a new voice cut through the discussion. "He won't be going alone." Alex turned to see Finn approaching, his feathers slicked down by rain and his posture showing the determined calm that had emerged during their recent training sessions. Behind him came Vera, her crystal body catching the emergency lights, and Dale, the insectoid cadet who had proven surprisingly adept at underwater navigation. "We've been training together for 2 weeks," Finn continued. "We know how to work as a team in aquatic environments. Alex has the primary water skills, but each of us brings capabilities that could be crucial for this rescue." Commander Nail looked between the 4 cadets, her expression weighing the desperate nature of the situation against the risks of sending students into mortal danger. "Explain your plan." Alex moved to the tactical display showing the shuttle's position. "I can free dive to the passenger compartment and assess the situation inside. Vera's crystalline structure makes her perfect as an anchor point for rescue lines. Dale can handle the precision work of setting up breathing apparatus for survivors. And Finn's natural buoyancy gives him excellent mobility for guiding people to safety. The storm conditions are exactly the kind of conditions humans train for," Alex interrupted. "Commander, people are dying in there while we debate this. Let us try." The silence stretched for long seconds, broken only by the sound of rain against the facility's windows and the distant rumble of thunder. Finally, Commander Nail nodded. "You have 1 hour before the shuttle's structural integrity fails completely. Standard rescue protocols are suspended. You have full authority to improvise as needed. But if any of you are in serious danger, you abort immediately." 20 minutes later, the 4 cadets stood at the water's edge, wearing minimal gear and connected by safety lines that would allow them to support each other without the bulk of traditional rescue equipment. The storm was reaching its peak intensity, with waves over 2 meters high and wind that made standing on the dock a challenge. "Everyone remember the plan," Alex called over the noise of the storm. "We work as a team, we watch each other's backs, and we don't take unnecessary risks. Ready?" The others nodded, their expressions showing the mixture of fear and determination that Alex recognized from his own face during Earth's worst weather emergencies. Together, they entered the churning water. The swim to the shuttle was brutally difficult. Storm waves crashed over them constantly, and the water was filled with debris from the crash. But Alex's training held true, and his teammates adapted the techniques they had learned to the extreme conditions. Vera's stability kept their guideline anchored. Dale's breathing control allowed him to navigate the turbulent underwater currents, and Finn's natural buoyancy let him ride the waves instead of fighting them. When they reached the shuttle, Alex dove to assess the damage. The passenger compartment was partially flooded, with air trapped in the upper sections where survivors were clinging to seats and emergency handholds. He could see at least 8 people inside, their faces showing the stark terror of beings who had never expected to face death by drowning. Surfacing next to the shuttle, Alex called to his team. 8 confirmed survivors, compartment half-flooded, structural damage, but the hull is holding. We need to get them out one at a time through the emergency hatch. What followed was the most challenging rescue operation any of them had ever attempted. Working in shifts, they guided survivors from the flooded compartment to the surface, then to safety lines that connected back to the rescue boats waiting in calmer water. Each rescue required precise coordination between all 4 team members, and the storm conditions made every step dangerous. Vera proved invaluable as a stable platform, her crystal structure allowing her to maintain position even in the worst waves. Dale's precision breathing control let him work in the flooded compartment, longer than should have been possible for his species. And Finn, despite his initial fear of water, moved through the storm with growing confidence, his aerial instincts translating perfectly to 3-dimensional movement in the chaotic environment. But it was Alex who dove deepest, stayed underwater longest, and took the greatest risks to ensure that every survivor made it to safety. His human physiology, adapted by millions of years of evolution on a dangerous world, allowed him to function in conditions that would have killed most galactic species. By the time they guided the last survivor to safety, the storm was beginning to break and the shuttle's hull was showing critical stress fractures. As they swam back toward the Academy facility, Alex realized that something fundamental had changed in how his teammates looked at him. They no longer saw him as the dangerous primitive from the death world. They saw him as the person who had taught them to be stronger than they ever thought possible. 12 lives saved, Commander Nail announced to the assembled Academy as the 4 exhausted cadets were brought ashore. Thanks to the courage and skill of 4 first-year cadets who demonstrated exactly the kind of cooperation and determination that this academy exists to foster. As medical technicians checked them for injuries and exhaustion, Finn approached Alex with an expression that held profound respect. I was wrong about everything, he said simply. About you, about your people, about what it means to come from a dangerous world. You didn't teach us to be savage or violent. You taught us to be brave. Alex smiled, too tired for elaborate speeches. I taught you to swim, Finn. You already had the courage, you just needed to learn how to use it. In the days that followed, word of the rescue spread throughout the galactic military network. The Academy received formal commendations from 3 different planetary governments whose citizens had been aboard the crashed shuttle. More importantly, requests began arriving from military academies on dozens of worlds, asking for information about human water survival training and whether similar programs could be established at their facilities. Commander Nail made the announcement at the weekly assembly 6 days later. Effective immediately, the Academy will be establishing a permanent adverse environment survival program, with Cadet Reed as our primary instructor consultant. All cadets will have the opportunity to learn water survival, extreme weather adaptation, and emergency rescue techniques. She paused, her large eyes finding Alex in the crowd of assembled cadets. We have learned that the challenges of dangerous worlds don't create savages or primitives. They create protectors, beings who understand that individual strength means nothing without the wisdom to share it with others. As the assembly dispersed, Alex found himself surrounded by cadets from dozens of species, all eager to sign up for advanced training sessions. But the moment that meant the most came when Vera approached with a simple observation. You know what I find most remarkable about all this? She said, her crystal voice chiming with warmth. You came here thinking you needed to prove that humans deserved a place among civilized species. Instead, you showed us that civilization isn't about avoiding danger or conflict. No? Alex asked. No. It's about facing danger together, helping each other grow stronger, and using your strengths to protect those who need protection. Her crystalline form caught the afternoon light, casting rainbow patterns across the Academy's polished floors. You didn't just teach us to swim, Alex. You taught us what it really means to be civilized. As Alex watched his fellow cadets head off to their next classes, he reflected on how much had changed since his arrival. He had come to the Academy as an outsider, a representative of a species that the galaxy viewed with suspicion and fear. He was leaving as something entirely different. He was leaving as a teacher, a protector, and a bridge between the galaxy's safe worlds and the dangerous universe that surrounded them all. The Deathworlder had found his place among the stars, not by conquering or dominating, but by sharing the gifts that his harsh world had given him. And in the process, he had learned that the most important survival skill of all wasn't strength or endurance, or the ability to hold your breath underwater. It was the wisdom to know that no one survives alone.